Hello everyone and welcome to the first video in my course covering the Cambridge IGCSE 1 to 9 qualification in computer science, and this one will specifically look at Unit 8, the programming unit, using the Python programming language. So let's get started. So in this first session we're just going to be focusing on getting started in Python. So we'll look at how you get Python. We'll look at some IDEs, we'll create our first project, and we will use variables, print to screen, and a little bit of a look at inputs as well. So let's get started. So if you type in Python in Google, Python will be the first hit you get, or if you prefer, you could just go to python.org, and this is the home page. If you go to downloads, Python will know which computer you're using and it will automatically give you the most recent version of Python to download, and you can click it and go through the install manager and it will install it for you. So this is the program I'm going to be using for this course. I'm going to be using this because it's more than suitable for the IGCSE, because we don't really need to go in depth in terms of using the features that we might get in different IDEs. So if you just want to use this for the IGCSE and you don't think you're going to take it any further, this would be the ideal option for you. Okay, now there is another one that is available for Linux, Windows and Mac, and it's called PyCharm. Right, now this is one of the most popular IDEs for Python there is, and it offers some different features like error fixing, and it will underline different errors for you if you've made a typing mistake making variables and things like that. Don't worry if you don't know what that means yet, you will later on in the course. So this offers some really good professional standard development tools. So if you think you might want to take programming in Python a little bit further than the IGCSE, this would be a really good option to do. Okay, there is a paid version of it, but for you, when you click download, just use the community version, and like Python, it will just install and you'll be able to run it from there. All right. Now, there is another one that is very similar to PyCharm called Anaconda, and like PyCharm, it offers some professional standard development tools that you might use. So again, if you want to go a little bit further than the IGCSE, this might be a good option for you. Between PyCharm and Anaconda, it's just personal preference. They're both free. You could try them both, or I'm sure once you try one, you'll like it, no problem. Now, there is a very good program if you're using a Microsoft computer called Visual Studio. And Visual Studio doesn't only offer Python, you can program in a multiple programming languages using it. And again, it offers some really good professional standard development tools. And again, if you're using it for personal use, it does come with a free version. If you're doing it as a company, you would have to pay. But for people doing the IGCSE, obviously you're not a company, you will get that for free. Now, if you like Microsoft products, and this does not, well, let me say, you can get this for Mac, but the version for Mac does not have Python in it. All right, so just be aware, if you've got a Mac and you download this, you will not be able to use Python with it. It will allow you to write in different languages like C#, for example, but not Python. If you want the Python version of this, there is a different program, and this is the one that we're looking at here. Okay, so it's called Visual Studio Code, and this will, again, it will let you do a few different languages, but it does allow you to code in Python. Okay, and again, like the others we've looked at, it just offers you a bit more comprehensive use and some more professional tools for developing if you want to take it a little bit further. Now, if you're working on a Chromebook or you just don't want to download a version of Python, you can create a free account at replit.com. If you just type in Replit into Google, it will be the first hit, and you can just click create and you can create a Python project in here, no problem. And you don't have to download anything. So there are your options if you want to, well, depending what you want. If you're just doing the GCSE and you don't want to go any further, I would probably recommend using what I'm going to use, and that is just the Python idle itself. All right, now I've already installed it all in my computer, so I'm just going to get started. So It's going to open up my idle, and then when you open up your idle, this is the screen that will open up. It will say idle shell, and depending on your version, it will depend what you've got up there. Okay, now you can write simple code in here. It will do simple maths and things like that, and it'll give you the answer. But it's not really a good place to write code. This is more where your code runs. All right, so what we're going to do is create a new file to start up a new project. So you just go to File and New, all right, or you can press Control N or Command N if you're on a Mac, and you will see a window opens up. So this is the side it currently says Untitled, where you write your code, and this is the side that runs the code. Okay, first thing I always do is save it, just in case my computer switches off or something. So I can go File and I can click Save As and find somewhere where you want to save it. I've got a Python project folder here already, and I'm going to put it in my IGCSE revision because this is an IGCSE course, and I'm just going to save it in here, and I'm just going to call it Getting Started. Right, so now I'm good to go. So the first thing I want to do is just go over a really simple print command. So this is kind of the first program that people write when they start a new language, and the command to print out to the screen in Python is quite simple: print, and then you open brackets, and then anything in speech marks Python will write. Anything at all. So I can do this, and then if you go to run and run module, or you can press the F5 key on your keyboard, and it will ask you to save it, and then you'll see it run, and oh, I didn't close it's not a good start for me, is it? All right, there you go, I've closed it now. Now I'm going to press F5 to make it run, and you'll see it just simply prints out to the screen what I've wrote. Okay, now we can test this. You can literally put anything you like, even if you write absolute nonsense in there. Python will literally just print it out because Python will think that that's what you want to say. Okay, so just bear that in mind. If you do make a spelling mistake, Python will not pick it up. It's not like Word. Okay, then now the next thing I want to look at is just looking at variables. Okay, so the print command we've talked about, and it will literally just print out what you want. But variables are a little bit different. They can be used with print commands, but there's something we have to create ourselves. Okay, so let's just have a quick look at what they are. I'll go to my whiteboard and think about your computer memory, and think about maybe it being a bit like a chest of drawers here. Okay, now if you think about a chest of drawers, there's quite a few drawers down here. If you think about your computer memory, there are not just quite a few, there are millions, if not, well, definitely millions, maybe hundreds of thousands if you've got an older computer, but there are a hell of a lot of chest of drawers. And these chest of drawers are just, every drawer is representing a space in memory. Now, what we do in programming in order to make it easier to find things inside of these drawers. So for example, I could put some pens in these drawers. Let's change my color there so we can see. I could put some pens in these drawers, but once I put the pens in the drawers, they're going to be harder to find, especially if there's hundreds of thousands or millions of drawers to look for. So what we do is, I will put a name on the front of the drawers here, pens, and then I place pens inside of them. And it makes it easier to find the pens when I need them now, because I can find them. Like, I can see the name on there to find them. So in Python, the code to do this is you just name the memory. So I can say pens, and then make it equal to, and then in this case, there's pens inside. But I can do this with anything. If I want to hold somebody's name, I can say name, and then equals to Chris. like that. So let's have a look at this in Python. So if I open up my Python from before, and I can say we'll stick to name, and I can just make it equal to, and in speech marks, a name. And then now I can say print, and then in brackets just write name. And then if I run that, you'll see it just prints my name inside. It doesn't print the word name. Yeah, this is the space in memory, and it's finding the space in memory and printing what is inside of it. Okay, so this is how variables work. Now we can, if we want, add this into a sentence. So I can say print, and then I'm going to use this F string. We'll talk about that more in other lessons, but F strings makes it a lot easier to connect things together. And I can say hello, and then put name, and then say pleased to meet you, and then close my speech marks. And then when I run this, it will connect whatever the name is in here. So I've made it Chris. Whatever the name is in here, it will connect it into the sentence, and then it will just run it. And you can see here, hello Chris, pleased to meet you. Right, so we can create a variable quite simply, and then we can use it in an output like that. I'm just going to delete these for now, and we're going to have a look at more variables, but we'll have a look at some numbers. Okay, so if I was to say I make a variable called num1, and I can make it equal to 3, and maybe num2 and make it equal to 8, and now I can, there's a couple of things I could do. I could create another variable and make it equal to num1 plus num2, and then print that. Or if I wanted to just print the answer straight away, I could also say print num1 plus num2, like this. Okay, and then if I run this one, you can see it gives me the same answer twice. And again, I could, if I wanted, put this into a sentence. So I could say and then make sure I close my speech marks, and then if I run that, you see it puts that into a sentence, no problem. All right, so we've looked at variables, and we've looked at putting strings in variables or words in variables, and we've also looked at putting numbers in variables. Now what I want to look at now is, instead of us as programmers putting the value into the variables, allow the user, the person who's using our program, to input their own. Okay, now this means that we need to know a little bit about data types. So I'm going to put a comment here. If I use a hash or an asterisk in Python, it means Python will not read what is behind it. So it's just for humans. And we're going to have a look at some data types. Now, data types are really important in computer programming, because you need to tell the computer what it is that they're working with, because the computer needs to know. Python does a good job at guessing a lot of the time, but we do really need to tell, especially when we've got a user input. So there are different types of data, obviously. So the first one we have is an int, or an integer. Okay, and that is a whole number. And then we have a string, and that is basically anything in speech marks. Now, I'm saying anything in speech marks because numbers can also go in speech marks, and we'll look at that in a second. Okay, and then we also have in Python, we also have a char, which is a single character. So it's just like one character. So an example might be like that. Any character, any letter, any number, but it has to be a single. So it's basically a really small string. We have floats, and they are simply decimals, any decimal. And then finally, we have other data types, but the ones we need to know for now, we have Boolean. And they are simply true or false. Okay, so these are the data types. Remember, they're really important because Python needs to know what data we're using. So let's have a look at inputting a word, allowing a user to input a word. So to allow the user to input a word, all we do is we can say, maybe call it name again, and say equals to input, and then we type a message to tell the user what to do. So just like that. And now if I run that, and I'm just going to put at the bottom print, just so we can see it running. So if I run this, you'll see we get actually, if this ever gets a little bit full and you don't like reading from the bottom like this, you can just close it, click OK, and then if you run it again, it will open up a fresh one. All right, I'm just going to close that again because I just press return, and that will probably give me an error. So, all right, so now I'm just going to write Billy as a name, and then you can see it just prints Billy. And I can also write any name I like in there, and it will print it straight out, because instead of us setting the value like we did before, we're allowing the user to input their own value by using this. Now, to input a number, it's a little bit different, because we have to say, we have to say a number is equal to int for integer, and then input. And then open the brackets, a second set of brackets, and then in speech marks, just write the message. Enter a number. And then because I've opened two brackets, I close two brackets. And now if I can print this, and I'll run it, you can see if I enter my name, I can write anything, and then if I enter a number, it will allow me to enter a number. Okay, now I'm just going to do one more because I can see this video is getting quite long. I didn't mean it to be this long, my apologies, but we're going to do maybe have a number 2 is equal to a float input, and then let's just say enter decimal, and I've closed two brackets again. Remember, open two brackets, close two brackets, and then we'll print number 2. And then run. So I can write anything for my name, I can write any whole number, and then on this one I have to write a decimal, and what's it done? Number 2 is not defined. Let's see what I've done here. Print. There you go. Another typing mistake. Let's run that again. And 3.7. There you go. Now let's have a look at this though. So this is when data types become really important, because if I run this, and for a string I can write a number, because I said before numbers can be strings. But if I want to write a number and I type a letter in, you'll see I get an error. All right, now there is a way of working around this in Python, but we can look at that later on in the course, and you don't actually need it for the GCSE. But later on in the course we'll probably look at it just because it's a good thing to know. So I can try again, and again, like I said, it can be a number, and I can put this a number, and then if I write this as a whole number and not a decimal, you'll see it automatically turns it into a decimal. So that's not too bad. But what Python will not allow you to do is write a number into an integer. And another thing, although it lets us do this, if let's say, this will be the last thing I promise because we're getting very long now. If I create another one here, we create another one of these, and I just put it underneath, and I just change that to, we'll change it to name, let's change it to num, yeah, num2 and num1, oh, we'll just go nu because I've typed nu now, nu1 and nu2, and we've got them as normal inputs. I'm just going to delete these, and then I'm just going to, let's say, answer is equal to nu1 plus nu2, and then print answer. Right, so I'm going to run this, and then let's have a look what happens. So let's just keep it simple. I'm going to do 2, and I'm going to do 3. So I should get the answer 5 because I plus them together. But look, because it's a string, I don't get the answer 5. It just joins them together. Because in speech marks, so if I have two things in speech marks, like this, let's go back to my pen, sorry, 2 plus 2, it will always give me the answer 22, okay? And 2 plus 2 is obviously 4, and 2.0 plus 2.0 is 4.0. Now, at the moment, these, especially, you could probably see the difference between this one, no problem. You're probably thinking, well, they're the same. But when you're dealing with complicated program and very big numbers, these become an issue, okay? So we have to make sure as much as we can, when we want to use a decimal, we have a decimal. And when we want to use a whole number, we use an integer. And when we just want something that is not used for mathematics, we can use a string or a character, no problem. Okay, so I'll leave that there for now, okay? And you can have a go at the tasks that I've left on there for you, and I will also put the answers so you can check them, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye for now.